Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Hey guys, what's happening? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Are you ready to take your iPad music making to the next level? Stick around. Today I'm going to show you how to set up a bedroom home studio based around an iPad. One of the most important things that you're going to need in any home studio setup is a pair of monitor speakers. This is just a pair of entry-level Behringer Truth monitors that I've had for about the last 15 years, but you're going to need a way to hear your sound back, and you're not going to want to use normal hi-fi speakers because those are going to color your sound, whereas monitor speakers are built specifically to have a much more flat frequency response, so that the sound that they're going to represent is specifically a more accurate sound than hi-fi bookshelf speakers. I find it's usually best to start at the beginning. So once you've got a pair of monitor speakers picked out that you like and you've got them all set up, here I've got some stands and I've got some little foam cushions from Oralex to help separate the speakers from the stands and help isolate the vibrations of the speakers. Once you've got these set up and plugged in, you're ready to get going. And the very first thing we're going to need is an audio interface to plug into these speakers to get sound from the iPad into the speakers. I've just got kind of a makeshift table set up today so we can set this up, but you might want to get yourself some sort of a little studio desk to be a little bit more efficient. This is the Focusrite Scarlett audio interface, and it's a great first audio interface. It's got stereo input and it's got stereo output that we can connect to the speakers. Let's go ahead and connect this to the speakers now. I've got some standard 1/4-inch cables here, and we can just plug a left and a right directly out of our Scarlett interface directly into these powered speakers. And this is going to allow you to control the volume of your music to the speakers directly from the front of your Focusrite with the big volume knob here. You're going to control your volume to the speakers. Excellent. The next thing we'll need is a powered USB hub. And by powered, I mean that we're going to be plugging this into wall power. And this is going to allow us to plug multiple devices, including the audio interface, into our iPad. Now let's also note that you could use any iPad that you like to set up a home studio. I started out with just a small iPad, an iPad Mini 2. But obviously, you know, the larger iPad you get and the more recent, iPad you get, it's going to have more processing power. More processing power means you can run more synthesizers at the same time. So if you want to do some really heavy studio production, you might want to get something a little bit more serious than an iPad Mini 2. Although, that is a really good place to start, and that's how I started with iPad music making as well. So you're going to need a way now to plug this USB port into your iPad. And I used the Apple brand USB to Lightning adapter 3. That's going to allow us to plug into the iPad. And it gives us an extra port here, which we're going to use to get power to the iPad while we're working. I've got a super long cable here from Anchor that allows us to plug directly into the powered ports on the bottom of this Anchor USB hub. The bottom 3 ports are for power only, and the top ports will talk directly to whatever we're plugging this into, which in this case is going to be an iPad Air 2 as the heart of our setup today. Arranging this a little better. Now to get the audio interface talking to the iPad, we'll take the USB connection out of the back of your audio interface, and we're going to plug that directly into the powered USB hub, and now the iPad is connected to the audio interface, which you can see by powering on just there. Now our basic connections to get sound are actually all ready to go. It's just that simple. We've plugged in our Focusrite audio interface into our monitor speakers and we're ready to go there. We can control the volume to those speakers using the volume knob on the front of the audio interface. And we've got our iPad plugged into the audio interface and everything is plugged in using our powered USB hub right here. And we're ready to go. But we do want to take it today a little bit further, and we're going to add a MIDI controller and we're going to add a hardware synth to this setup. Check it out. With all these great synth apps that have been coming out on iPad, you're probably going to want a MIDI controller so that you can play them with keys instead of just the on-screen controls. What I found for my workflow is that the Novation Launch Key 25 is a pretty solid controller to use with the iPad. You've got plenty of knobs and buttons that you can assign, and unlike the Launch Key Mini, which is a little bit smaller, this one has a modulation wheel, which I'm really preferential to using. And what we'll do is we'll just plug a USB from the output of our MIDI controller into the powered USB hub. And that's going to allow your controller to talk to the iPad. And you can plug as many controllers in as you like. I've got 7 ports here, so we still have 5 ports available using this Anchor USB hub. And I can just keep plugging in multiple controllers in case I want to get extreme with it. I think it's definitely worth taking the extra step to add a hardware synth to your home studio setup. This is the brand new Uno synth from IK Multimedia. Just got this week, and it's a super fun little synth and a really great addition to the iPad music studio here. And what we'll do is we'll take the USB that this came with and we're going to plug that right into our powered USB hub, and that is going to give us the ability to get this Uno synth talking to the iPad. We'll take an audio output from the back of the Uno synth and we're going to plug that directly into the Focusrite audio interface here. Now if you had an audio interface with more than 2 inputs, you could plug in as many synths as you wanted, and that's certainly an advantage to having an audio interface with more than 2 inputs. And I wish they would have included a little bit longer USB cord with this Uno synth, but that'll work just fine for today. That's pretty much all there is to it to get started setting up a home studio based around an iPad, keeping in mind that everything is pretty much interchangeable, meaning that you don't have to use these monitor speakers. You could choose whatever monitor speakers you like, and you certainly don't have to use this MIDI controller. You can choose whatever MIDI controller you like. And you certainly don't have to use this hardware synth. You can choose any hardware synth or synths that you like. And you don't have to choose an iPad Air 2. It could be any model of iPad that you like. And you don't have to choose this audio interface. It can be any audio interface that you like and suits your workflow. And you don't have to choose this powered USB hub. It can be any brand of powered USB hub. All of these things are interchangeable, and depending on what you want to do, you'll pick the tools that suit your workflow. Now right now there's a whole bunch of really great music making apps that are available for iPad. Today we're going to explore an app called by Kymatica. I find that this is a really great app for integrating some hardware and some MIDI controllers into the iOS environment. We're going to start by telling that we're using a MIDI controller and that it's this one specifically. So we'll go to the menu in the upper right here and we're going to select MIDI control. And it'll say right off the bat that there are no connected MIDI sources. Well, this is a MIDI source, so we're going to let know that it's connected. So we'll tap the button here, and then we'll choose from the list the Launch Key MK225 Launch Key Control. And now this is connected to and we're good to go here. And we can test out our connection, and we can also test out our volume to the speakers if we insert an AU synth into So we'll start by doing just that. Let's pick for this the Xeon AUV3 synth, and I'll load that into What we'll do is we'll go back to the menu and we'll select MIDI routing, And over here you've got this great little menu that will keep expanding in size as you keep adding more devices to ARM and inside of ARM. And right now we're just going to make sure that the launch key MIDI is routed to the Xeon synth. So we'll just, click that, close the menu there. And what we can see is that we've already got some level inside of ARM. So if I turn the volume up on our speakers, you can hear that we are in fact playing the Xeon synth, and we're getting that through our speakers. Fantastic. Okay, next up, let's route our hardware synth into ARM. We're going to add a new track, and up here we're going to choose hardware input. Now, if you had an audio interface that had multiple inputs, those would show up here. We currently just have the left and right input, and that will show up here under our options. Hardware input, Scarlett 2i2, USB, left and right. And we'll select that. And that means that now our hardware synth is being routed into the audio interface, and that's going into the iPad. And what that's going to allow us to do is to start putting effects inside the iPad onto our hardware synth. It's going to allow us to control the volume of our hardware synth as well. And that's pretty handy. Now let's say you right off the jump want to start assigning these to your MIDI controller, again, which could be any MIDI controller. We're going to go ahead and click the channel option here, and we're going to click the little sliders icon to get up our MIDI control window. We'll click on volume because we want to assign that to a controller, and we're going to click learn. We'll go ahead and click any knob on any controller that we would like to send that to, and we're going to learn that control. And that didn't work. Why not? Because I don't have the right controller selected in the MIDI control. It's interesting to note here that because these are meant to work with Ableton and stuff, and the way that it works with Ableton and stuff, they actually have two MIDI outputs. And one is for these in control settings, and then one just says launch key MK225, launch key MIDI. Okay, so that's got our MIDI talking to Xeon still, but now I should be able to assign this volume to one of my controllers up here. So again, we're going to click on the channel down here. We'll click on the sliders. It's going to bring up our MIDI sources. We'll click volume because we want to assign a fader, to the volume. We're going to click learn, and we'll click our knob over here. And now our knob on our controller is now controlling the knob inside of ARM. And let's say that we want to not have a full 100% range of movement, meaning when I push this 100% of the way up, it's going to plus 6 dB. That's a little extreme, so let's adjust the range on that. We'll open up channel 2 again. We're going to click the little MIDI icon. We're going to go back to volume, which is what we're adjusting here with our MIDI controller. And down here at the very bottom, it says range 0% to 100%. That means that when we turn the knob, it's how much of that volume slider is being affected. So we'll click that, and we'll tell it instead of 100%, maybe only go up to 70% when I move the knob. And now, when I move this knob, our slider only goes back to the 0 instead of all the way up to the top. Just a handy little way to get your volume adjusted to a slider there. And you can do this for all of your, tracks using this controller. I've got 8 faders at the top. You can assign these to whatever you want. They don't have to be to the volume knobs, but I find this is a really convenient way to set it up. Okay, so we've got our speakers on, we've got everything connected. Let's say that we'd like to sequence our hardware synth with one of the cool sequencers that's available to us inside of something like ARM. So what let's do is we'll add a new track. We're going to add an audio unit extension, and I like to use the Rosetta suite from Bromboss, and I'll choose the Rosetta baseline. This is a sequencer, and we're going to go to the menu. We're going to go to the MIDI routing, and we're going to assign that sequencer to our hardware synth. So up here we have Rosetta bassline MIDI out. And if I look down on the side here, here it is, the Uno synth. So I'll just click that and make sure that the bassline generator sequencer is talking to our hardware unit. And now, if I just bring up the bassline and I generate a pattern and I press play, I turn our volumes up and stuff, there it is. We're now controlling our hardware synth using the Rosetta sequencer. And this will automatically be synced to anything else that you've got running inside of OM. So if you've got some drums, you've got some loops, you want to play some other, synths and whatnot over the top, everything is automatically synced up already because you're controlling this now with the same sequencing, with the tempo sync sequencer inside of OM. Where you'll go from here, friends, really depends on what kind of music you want to make with your iPad, what kind of hardware synths you might like to add to your setup, and what kind of MIDI controllers you might like to use to tie all that together. If you'd like to learn more about how to make music in OM, I highly suggest checking out Doug Woods' YouTube channel, The Sound Test Room. He's got a bunch of videos on how to use the Rosetta sequencers from Brombos. Check it out. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this has given you some insight into how you might expand your home studio setup with your iPad. Until next time, guys. It takes a lot of work and time to make all these videos, and I really appreciate the support I've gotten so far. If you want to help support the work that I do in this channel, please consider checking out some of my sample packs over on Electronisounds.com, or maybe become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and you can get yourself some bonus downloads as well as supporting creative content here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, guys.